episode of His Wondrous Works. Today I'm joined with 5 wonderful people that I love very dearly and have had the privilege of seeing grow in the life of Cornerstone over the last number of years. This year, Cornerstone Wirral is celebrating its 10th anniversary. And as part of that, we're taking time to hear stories from across the life of the church, of God's grace and his faithfulness, of what he has done, as well as look ahead to the next decade here at Cornerstone. So you who are listening or watching, you're invited into the conversation to hear some of the history of the church, of the wondrous works God has been doing in and through Cornerstone Wirral. So Claire, Katie, Tina, Charlotte, Terence, welcome. This is all your debut on the podcast here, and I know you're so excited, filled with expectation and joy to go. Now, you 5 are here grouped because you are just 5 of many stories of coming to know Jesus as Lord and growing as a disciple of Jesus here at Cornerstone. So we want to hear from your perspective, how you came to know Jesus, what it's been like growing as a disciple of Jesus here at Cornerstone, and what are some of the things you're thankful to God for. So let's start with you, Claire. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about how you came into contact with Cornerstone and how you became a Christian.
Okay. So I became a Christian because my sister, who was a Christian, was praying for me, and she invited me to go to like a young adult Christian camp thing. So I went there, became a Christian there, but needed a church. So somebody recommended Cornerstone. So at the time then, I think the services were 4:00, I think. So my sister Ellie would come with me. She'd go to her church service in the morning, then come with me in the afternoon. And then she did that for about 3 weeks. And then she just said, I have to stay by myself now. So
she entrusted you into our care?
Yeah, she did. And then I've never been anywhere since.
Great. So what were some of your memories coming into Cornerstone back then?
So yeah, no, they were, I suppose it probably looks a lot different than it does now. So we were in a rented building. So there was a lot going on behind the scenes that I probably wasn't aware of that people were doing. Everyone was really warm and welcoming. People were really patient with me when I look back now and think of like some of the like conversations I like, just how I would have acted in certain situations and stuff. People were really patient and just pointed me to God and just step by step, just like showed me the gospel and really basic, made it really clear for me to understand.
So Claire walked into my house one night and we were like having this Q&A, this type of stuff. And Claire, like the first question is like, so tell me, John, how do you get paid? And I was like, well, not a lot.
Yeah, that's true. I remember that actually because Annie had a whiteboard, didn't she? And it was, we were doing the Well We All Want course, and he was like, right, ask all your questions now, and then throughout the duration of the course, we'll probably answer those questions. So then I asked that question and Josh was like, okay, I don't think the course answers that question, so I'll address that now.
Thank you, Claire. Katie, what about you?
So I got invited to come along to Pebbles. A friend of mine invited me along, and that's where it started for me. So, and I think I was going to Pebbles for about a year before I then came to church. I kind of started just questioning things in my head. And I actually started watching a podcast that kind of discredited the Bible, and I was listening to that and thinking, that really at the point where I thought, no, there can't be a God. And then it was my sister said to me, she questioned it and said, well, what would life be? What would it be like without without God? And then, so that's what made me start to think more. And then one week I was chatting to Eleanor at Pebbles and said, would you meet me outside church one Sunday? And she did. And that was it. That's what got me going.
What were some of your early memories of coming to Pebbles and the people you met?
I think it's just how lovely everyone was. And I remember being surprised when I started coming to church at how many people were in the church room that were at Pebbles. Like, oh, she goes to Pebbles, she goes to Pebbles. And then it kind of all clicked with like all the lovely people that go to Pebbles. And it was just the friendliness and in the Pebbles, just no clickiness, everyone was just so warm and welcoming. And then that kind of was the same when I started going to church as well.
That's good to hear. And we'll hear the next part of that in a bit. Tina, what about you?
So I first came through my daughter, Jacqueline. So she was a new believer. And she said to me, I want to find a gospel-centered church. So she found Cornerstone, and I used to drop her off. And she just invited me to come to the church, but I did come very reluctantly, I must admit. on that first day. So I just remember that first day. But it was really welcoming, because actually Kat Newbury came over with a bowl of pasta, chicken pasta. And I thought, oh gosh, is this what happens when you come to church?
I had a bowl of chicken pasta.
I did, because you were doing something. So you'd all brought lunch, and obviously I didn't know about lunch. You didn't know, me and Jack. So I thought, oh, this is really like welcoming. So it was just, I was going through like a crossroads in my life, and the last thing I wanted really was religion or God or Jesus. But I came because at that time I was doing courses for like motivational courses, self-help, all those sort of things. And this was just like a little add-on to that, really, I think. But obviously it changed. It did change. Yeah. So there was lots of really passionate like preaching coming from the front. And I sort of had to make this decision. I can remember you, Josh, and remember your arms up in the air, because you do that quite a bit, don't you? Your arms up in the air.
Like an air traffic controller.
This is what the world says. This is what the world offers, and this is what Jesus offers. And it was like as if, oh gosh, I've got to make a choice here. Like, oh, I tell you what, I've made some really bad decisions in my life, and things haven't gone too well. Maybe, just maybe, there might be. Maybe I haven't, you know what the world offers hasn't been really helpful for me. Maybe I'll have a little look into this. So that was the start of it. Yeah.
I remember your first Sunday. We've been praying for you for ages.
Oh, I didn't realise that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So much prayer gone into that, and stories, and it was wonderful when you came and see that happening. Charlotte, Terence, how about you guys? So while coming to church on a Sunday was probably after these guys, like our story goes a little bit further back, doesn't it? So share a little bit about that and how you came to Cornerstone.
So obviously Evie and Ollie James went to the same nursery, and that's how obviously people could come to meet Annie. And then obviously we got to know each other.
Yeah.
Met up a couple of times, and then you obviously invited us along.
Yeah.
And then from that day forward, we kind of haven't looked back, really, have we?
I remember the moment we were stood beside did we have a bouncy castle in church or something? Or there was some sort of
possibly, yeah.
Yeah. And you were like, oh, this is it. And I said, hey, why don't you come tomorrow? And you were like,
Terence come up to me and said, we're going to church on Sunday. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What your perspective, Charlotte?
So previously, like, when people come to church, they get invited to gospel communities, which is something we obviously do during the week, but we did things a bit the other way around. So we were involved in the High Beventon Gospel Community first. And just as Tina was saying, I was either going to I can't even remember what it was called now, like a self-help thing, or coming to the GC. And I made the decision, I don't know why, to go to the GC. And basically I was friends with Jem and Annie, and we were meeting up for coffee every Tuesday after the school run. And then they must have invited me to, it's all a bit of it seems so long ago. They invited me to the GC, and Terence came along, both the boys, and it just felt so homely. And I was just so intrigued of all these like stories about Jesus and what he was doing in their lives. And I was at the point of like a breakdown, really. And yeah, it was just incredible. Like everything was just starting to make sense. Like all the questions I had were all being answered in the GC. And I remember one night we were just going for tea, and I was so excited. I was like, I want to stay. So I ended up staying for the study. And then I think you were talking, I'm sure you were doing like a bingo or something for what Josh says in church. Like that.
So what was that?
It was like, what does Josh say a lot? And it was like, amen or something. And it was just like really casual. It was like we were just all sitting around casual eating food. It was nothing like serious or anything to be like uptight about. So yeah, and then we came to church, and then we've never missed unless we've had to. And then just a massive thing to point out as well, not long after we started coming, COVID hit. So the beginning of our like church journey was online, and that was huge. Like the support that we got from that, like, and the way we gospel each other online was just incredible, and that's like what held us together as well.
So you became a Christian just before COVID, didn't you?
Yes, I think February, and then we went into lockdown in March. It was literally straight after.
Yeah. So Terence, then, like, you were kind of watching this change in Charlotte and like see her grow, and you were there listening to her ask all these questions and listening to all of us on Zoom and online and the Sunday stuff. Like, what was a bit more of your journey to then actually becoming a Christian?
Yeah, basically just like listening to obviously Charlotte chatting to everyone online, sitting next to her, because I struggle a lot with dyslexia. So like reading the Bible and stuff, I struggle. And then that's when, I don't know if it was Joe or Chris or someone in the GC pointed out the app. What's the app called? The Well, yeah. And then that's helped an awful lot. So it's like, just going through and getting the earphones in. There's always something that can help you. You know what I mean? So there's nothing's like held me back, if you like. Yeah. Because I always struggled in school and stuff with reading and thinking, how am I going to do this? How am I going to get through this? And like someone passed me a book and I'd always panic. Yeah. And the Bible, someone was like, here's a Bible. And I was like, I'm going to do this. What?
It's daunting for everyone, but then particularly you felt that even more.
Yeah. But the help and support from everyone has been amazing.
So you remember the night you came to church? It was one of the first times after COVID we were allowed to meet again. And so I got a confession to make. So we're having this lament service because we're all like lamenting COVID and what was going on. And then I think you decided you were coming quite late to that evening.
Oh yeah, I don't think he was coming.
Yeah,
I was a bit like, I want him to come.
I got a message, like somebody said you were coming, and I was like, internally, I was like, out of all the services we want Terence to come to hear the gospel, I was like, it's not this. me of little faith was like, we're going to lament, we're going to cry, we're going to pray. It's COVID, so we're all like divided up into rows and stuff like that.
With masks on, I think, is still doing.
Yeah.
And all that type of stuff. And inside I was like, but then something amazing happened that night, didn't it? Like, do you remember? Do you want to share?
Yeah, I took communion.
Yeah.
That's first time, yeah.
Yeah. It
was amazing, yeah.
Felt like that night was everything kind of clicked into place. And it, like, felt like that night was when the Spirit really did something in you.
It was amazing, yeah. Getting goose pimples now, sitting here thinking about it.
I didn't know what to do. I was like trembling and I was like, oh my goodness, he's picking it up. What's going on? And then I think I shouted to Josh, like, and I was praying out loud. I was like, oh my word, this is like amazing.
I know, yeah.
Just weren't expecting it, was it?
I love that about Jesus. Like, that's how he works in salvation. It's never by our own works. It's never by our own plans. We can engineer like the best event or service or whatever, and yet it doesn't work. And then like you come to something like this, me of little faith, was just like, wow. Katie, so you've arrived at Pebbles, started coming on Sunday. Kind of tell us a little bit about what happened next and how you became.
It does seem a bit of a blur now. But the reason I did keep coming back, in honesty, it wasn't God to start with. It was the people. That's what made me keep coming back each week. And then I just started to learn more. I looked at the people that were going and hearing things like that they had a relationship with Jesus. That to me was like, what do you mean? How can you? Like, I'd known about Jesus and God all my life, but that kind of personal side of it. And then I think that's what kind of then made me want to find out more and keep coming back.
I remember you being like a questioner.
Oh yeah,
of everything. So like I could just see like God over through you was just like you had all these questions and he was just answering them all. And I remember we went for coffee once and like you had all these questions. You were like, I can't get over this, and like how does this work and how does that work? And I love that. And that was so true of like how did you feel like as those questions were being answered, like to that kind of actually like, okay, I believe this now. Like what was that like?
I've still got loads of questions. I still think I always will. And it just felt freeing and it felt safe to do that, like to have all these questions and in an environment, in whether it was in Jen's house or in a coffee shop or in church, I could ask them without feeling like I was being stupid or I was going to be judged, and everyone would say there's no stupid questions, you can ask anything. And I would come out with some interesting or like sometimes I don't know what's the word, like maybe controversial questions, just anything. But it was great to feel safe to be able to do that. And have them answered, and sometimes have them answered a little bit. But then I learned over time that I don't need like answers to everything. Like some stuff most of it I'm probably never going to understand. And that's okay. I think that was a massive thing for me to know that I don't have to completely understand everything. But yeah, I think I will always be a questioner.
I love it. Do you know about you? So like you've come now, you're engaging in Sundays, gospel communities. What did that look like for you when you actually became a Christian?
I think the first thing was just getting to know Jesus and who he was and what he'd done for me. I mean, once I got my head around that, I mean, one of my big questions was, why did he have to die? Why did Jesus have to die? What did he have to die for? And I was like recognizing like my own sin, and that we could be like seeing that people being open about that as well. And like, we're all sinners here. And that was something that really sort of got me, because I always thought like, oh, you've got to be good. And it's just, a church is just full of good people, and I wouldn't belong there because that's not for me. So just recognizing like what he'd done. So once I got a grasp of that, it was just a wow. It was just like my eyes were opened, my heart was opened, and then just getting to know him even more, and just being that real, just being real. I think like that's so different, isn't it? And like church, you know, like you can just be real and honest. Like Katie just said then, you know, just asking questions and feeling safe to do that as well. Yeah, and the grace as well. Oh my gosh, that's taken me a while. It's just, is it so simple? Just his grace, you know, that is enough. I've always like, I've got to strive to do this or strive to do that. It's always been striving. So it was that release and that freedom, you know, and I don't have to believe the lies of the world. I didn't realise how many lies there were out there. So for me, like personally, it's just been amazing. Yeah, it's been eyes opened, heart opened. Yeah. And just that encouragement as well, like encouraging. I mean, the church is just a gift, isn't it? It is an absolute gift. You know, and then we have the Holy Spirit, but we've also got the church, and, you know, always pointing me to Jesus. You know, I mean, at first, and I suppose like my GC leaders will remember this, I was so fixated on my own circumstances and what was going on. And sometimes it would be, oh, yeah, okay, I've heard about Jesus. Yeah, he's great, but what about this? I need this fix and I need that fix. And I was very much focused on that. And then just recognizing that, oh gosh, you know what? I can rest in him and his grace, and God is bigger than all these circumstances that are going on in my life. He's bigger, greater, and it was, yeah, it's just that growing, isn't it? You know, in that, and you know, and I suppose like as well at first, when I first walked in, it was like, oh, what can these people do for me? You know, it was that cultural like thing, isn't it? You know, how others can serve me, but how that sort of changes, you know, it evolves around, doesn't it? You know, we change, don't we? And it's like, oh, he's just so grateful for like what he's done in my life, you know, and he wasn't going to leave me there. You know, he really has just brought me out of that. Gosh, yeah, on this rock now. Yeah. So it's just amazing.
One of the joys of all these stories is that as a church, we've all then had the privilege of seeing each of you baptized, and it's been a joy. I think we've had nearly 70 baptisms since we planted, which is incredible. And each of you are part of that. Like, do you have any like fun, Claire, like sort of you, any like fun memories or the memories of your baptism, what that was like?
I remember with my own baptism, I think it's like you share a special bond with the people that you get baptized with. And I just remember it being such a joyful day, and more than I thought it was going to be. And yeah, being able to invite your friends and family. And I remember some of them like had never been to an adult baptism before, so they didn't know what to do. They didn't know whether they should bring me a gift and stuff. Like I had a few bouquets of flowers, which was lovely. But obviously I wasn't expecting that. But yeah, I don't know, it was just so joyful, just much more than you anticipate, like you prepare for it. And I suppose like even now having been baptized, and when those other baptisms, like the emotions just get you. Like I think it just totally brings it back round to why, you know, we are to share the gospel, because when you see somebody like proclaiming Jesus and that physical representation and you know what they're saved from, like, and what they're saved to, like what it's just like there's absolutely nothing more joyful than that, is there? Like there actually isn't. So yeah, baptisms, I think they're amazing. I think you can watch somebody's testimony when they've been filmed and you might not even know the person, especially now as the church is growing. Like there's some videos we watch of testimonies and I'm like, I don't actually know that person that well. Whereas like you would have once maybe had a bit more of a personal connection to them, but they still get you every time because you're still hearing about a sinner who's been saved. And yeah, you're crying over somebody you don't really know, and you're like, oh, and then at the end you're like, oh, can I give you a hug? Like, welcome to the fam. I don't know. So yeah, really good. Yeah.
These are always fond memories, especially when you walk away, haven't hugged that person so good. You're
So
like,
good, yeah.
I didn't think this through.
Yeah. Definitely.
Anyone else or like stories of that?
Yeah, I've got very fond memories of mine, but more so of when my eldest daughter then got baptised, getting in the pool again.
Yeah.
With you to Dunker. That was amazing watching that that process of her coming to Christ back then. Was
really
great.
special.
Yeah.
You guys had a bit of a fun baptism story, didn't you? Tell us that.
Very fun. Yeah. So Charlotte's obviously planned theirs. Planned it. Said like, went through the motions with you, saying like, Charlotte wants to get baptised. And she was like to me, come on, you going to do it? I was like, oh, I don't know. And then it went on for a while, didn't it? Like, obviously, because it got a planner for a while.
Yeah, but COVID struck.
Yeah,
didn't it?
COVID,
So I had
yeah.
to keep waiting.
Slowed it down,
and
yeah.
waiting,
Slowed it right down, yeah. And then I think it was the morning? No, well, it was obviously a couple of days before.
I think it was on a Thursday night. Yeah,
me, Josh, and Nick went to driving range. Yeah, we were literally talking about this the other day, weren't we? Yeah, and like something that week just made me like, don't know, something just not clicked as such, but something in my heart just thought, you know, it was amazing. Like,
gotta do it. Yeah,
gotta do it. Yeah. But then we kept it quiet, didn't we, from Charlotte? I think there was only a couple of us new.
It was only me and you, really. I think I told the elders.
Yeah.
And I was like, you guys okay with this? And they're like, yeah. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
like on the Thursday night, you dropped me off.
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, all right, let's do this. So we didn't tell Charlotte. So you take us to Sunday then.
Yeah, so on the Sunday we were getting ready and I was praying, like obviously like beforehand anyway, but like that morning, like it's not the right thing for him to do if he's not ready to do it. Like I don't want him to just be baptised because it's so important what it reflects, that if it's not the right time for him, then just be patient and just keep praying. So so on the day it was very emotional, like even our mums come, didn't they, and my sister came, so that was just amazing, just even to have them in church as well. And then so we go through the testimonies and then obviously like we're getting ready to be baptised and I was like really nervous. So Terence was like nowhere around me and I was thinking, oh my goodness, like this is awful, like, and I was so angry in my head, like really
We were literally chatting about this the other night.
I was like, this is terrible, like I'm getting baptised, he's not even here, like he's not even on the other side to grab my towel, like where is he? So I was thinking like what's going on in his head, like maybe he's just not even excited about me being baptised. So then I was like, can I go first? So Nick and Pam agreed and said, yeah, that's... Oh no, Pam wanted to go first because she was like really excited. So Nick said, yeah, you can go before me. And then Josh said, no, Nick, you're next. And Nick was a bit like, I'll have to go. So then Nick goes and then I'm standing there and still no Terence. I'm like, where is he?
Isn't he taking any photos of me? Where's his phone?
And then Josh, like, it was, I can't even remember the words.
Well, it's funny though, because little did you know that he was actually stood behind me and Alicia said to him, joking around, like, because she calls you Big T, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She was like, Big T, you getting in, like, joking around. And he was like, no, I am. Like, I've already spoke to Josh about it.
Yeah.
And he was like, I need you two to stand still because I'm about to take my pants off.
Take your shorts off.
Shorts on underneath. So me and Alicia are like here, like trying to like guard you from everybody else.
And Charlotte's looking around everywhere like, where's he going?
Yeah, I think because the main thing was he didn't take any spare clothes. So I was like, he's not doing it because he hasn't got anything. So he can't be. And then Josh obviously said Jesus doesn't break into like one person, he breaks into households. Hence, and then he said about Terence, and then Terence like repented and confessed. And to me, that was like bigger than anything, like even getting married, like that just surpasses everything, like him putting his faith into Jesus. And then the most amazing thing was Terence was able to baptise me. So
Whole reason why you had to go last.
Yeah.
I had to sneak round the whole morning, by the way, because I had to put my swimming shorts on. And then obviously Charlotte was all over the house because she was getting ready, trying to do her hair or whatever, get all the stuff ready, and I'm sneaking round. I had to get up early, put my shorts on, and then my other shorts on.
Yeah, because she was clearly watching because she knew you hadn't packed anything.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. I thought, if I take a towel or a bag or anything, she'll know straight away. I didn't even tell my mum till we were sitting in church. And she was like,
mum was in tears in the service, and now obviously.
And I was like, stop crying, mum, and then she leaned into me, started crying. I was like, stop it, because Charlotte doesn't know. I was like, oh, okay.
So Terence was on my right, you were on my left, Charlotte, and I kind of geared up to do you, and then I was like, and then I broken Terence, and I don't think I've seen as many tears.
No.
There's like 200 people there. It was like bawling their eyes out, trying to hold it together.
I remember Jo on the worship team, and she was just like blubbering, and I was like, oh my goodness, like it was just it was so genuine, wasn't it, that they all just seen him come to faith. And
yeah, it was amazing.
And I think because you four were all in RGC at the time, wasn't it? So for RGC, having come out of COVID as well, it was just so encouraging to have like 4 of yous like baptized. I just remember all of us were just so overwhelmed, like, but in the best possible way.
Yeah. So we've heard your stories coming to church, staying, all that type of stuff. Just for our kind of last few minutes, really. So obviously, it's not just obedience to follow Jesus firstly. It's not just obedience to be baptized, but then it's a lifelong obedience of growing in his likeness. What's it been like growing as a disciple of Jesus at Cornerstone? He wants to dive in.
I was going to say, you're looking at me. Thanks, Charlotte.
So it was quite convicting, really, because like me and Terence, obviously, like, what do you call it, Josh? A nuclear, what's it called? Family. You call it
nuclear family.
A nuclear family. Yeah. Where like obviously like we were living together, we had children, like we had all that like going for us type thing first. So like it was kind of like we have so much to change and like undo, if you like, that obviously not living in obedience to Jesus. So one of the massive major things was obviously we weren't married. And I remember having a really tricky conversation with the elders, which was in the best way, was love for us, and I was just really upset, and I just couldn't understand, like, you know, like I wasn't able to serve, wasn't able to, I think it was serve, was it? Because we couldn't become
just like
members.
In the formal teams,
Yeah. But looking back, it was all out of love. It was all pointing us to Jesus. But at the time, we were like, oh, like, because we've not been brought up in church. We didn't know the gospel at all. And looking back now to how like those conversations over prayer, to being like the first ones to get married in Cornerstone, was just incredible. And yes, it was convictions just for the best. So now we've got a whole life of following Jesus and bringing the children up, and just having that like freeing that we can bring the children up knowing Jesus, because I didn't. And all my anxieties and mental health and everything, like he wasn't in that, and there was no one pointing me to him, obviously, until I met Annie, and going forward.
Yeah, that was amazing to see you guys do that and share that with you, and it's wonderful to see how God does that.
On a wedding.
Wedding planner, weren't you, Claire?
I think, I suppose, like that growing, you can't do it by yourself, can you? So when they're like, when like Tina before you said, didn't you, like we've got the Spirit, and that's like incredible, and that convicts you so much. And I think you've got to keep plugging in when that happens, when you're convicted of your sin, but then you can't do it without the church, especially like the gospel communities, because I think without them, like they are they're the people who encourage you and speak into situations, and nobody might have gone through what you've gone through, but I suppose the gospel still applies to any situation we're in. So we're all equipped to speak into each other's situations, because I suppose the answer is still Jesus at the end of the day, isn't it? So yeah, I think that gospel community aspect, like, I suppose I think how our church functions, like, that is a huge part of it. And, you know, I definitely can see the benefit of that. There's a depth of relationship with those people in your GCs. There's, they just, you know, that the having that, like, it's difficult at times, isn't it? Like, we've got to have patience and with each other, and we're sometimes like on top of each other, that it can be tricky as well. Like, there's hard times to it, but ultimately, like, I think God's refining us in those moments. And I think even when I think back, like, I'm by no means like super mature in my faith or anything like that. I'm getting there. But I think when I look back, yeah, definitely for when I first started, and I suppose you can see evidence of God in your life, can't you? And you can see how people from Cornerstone played a huge part in that, especially for me, because of how they showed me Jesus. Not being like maybe a bit further ahead of me in their journey, but still, like, we're walking alongside together, aren't we? Like, helping each other out as best as we can, pointing each other to Jesus. So yeah,
I think a lot of what you've said just resonates with me. Like, it's been very gradual with me, but I think when the struggles have come up over the last 4 years in my life, lots of different things, but now looking back at them and how gospel community, friendships, and having church has just made me, and having God has made me be able to cope with them better. So when I look back, I don't know, it's like Jesus came in just at the right time, because a year after he came in, then a situation after situation occurred, and looking back, I don't know how I would have got through any of that without Jesus at my side, like, carrying me through it. And yeah, I just think, well, it's meant to be, wasn't it? He came in at that time for a reason, and did that. But having the gospel community and the friendships and church behind just makes that bit of difference, not going at it alone.
Yeah, just everything that you've said, really, it is, isn't it? It's like leaning into the gospel community, particularly building up those relationships. And, you know, when you are going through, and even when your faith is wavering and things like that can be really hard sometimes, because you perhaps don't want to admit that. And we want to try and keep that to ourselves, or if there's little bits of unbelief in there. And unbelief in the way that, believe in God, but little bits about not trusting in him. I think, no, God can't really do that, you know. But then people coming alongside and really encouraging you, you know, to see, like, the beauty of Jesus. And you know, it's when you look back, isn't it? You don't feel like you've changed, because I think, oh no, you know, but it's only when you sort of like really look back and think, oh yeah, that's how I was dealing with the situation then, you know, and I wasn't turning to God. And just how much we really need each other in that. Yeah, so yeah, that's really helped me. Like, good times and like bad times, you might want to call it, challenging times. You know, it is just that, having that, isn't it? And encouraging each other and loving each other in that way, even when it can be difficult.
Before we wrap up, is there anything you've not said that you want to say? There's so much more we could say, isn't there?
Yeah.
Can we get out of this?
Get out of this press conference.
Had a lovely time.
It's been a privilege and joy just to hear all your stories. It's been a privilege and joy to have a front row seat of seeing God do all this work in your life. So we want to praise him for all his wondrous works. And one thing that's really encouraged me is hearing how each of you have experienced that welcome into the body of Christ, but then how each of you have then taken that and done that to others. And each of you have helped establish this church and continue that culture going forward. And you pray that keeps multiplying, don't we? And that it keeps growing and keeps going out, and more people will share these same stories in your ways. So that's us. Another episode of His Wondrous Works complete. So you guys listening or watching at home, make sure you subscribe and like and share so that other people can hear all that we've been able to share today and to continue to make much of him. So tune in next week for our next episode of His Wondrous Works. God bless.